Coming up next on the Giants Chronicles podcast, we're talking all things Reese's Senior Bowl. Coming up next on the Giants Chronicles podcast. Welcome to the Giants Chronicles podcast. We're talking all things Reese's Senior Bowl. So if you don't know, the Reese's Senior Bowl took place this past week in Mobile, Alabama. And there are some of the prospects there are prospects that are looking to rise their draft stock. Prospects that maybe aren't the first round graded prospects, but they're looking to show teams kind of what they got. It's a good way to rise your draft stock, and that's kind of the prospects that are there. So when you hear me talking about these prospects, just note that maybe you've never heard these names before because they're not necessarily the names that everyone's hearing, like Bryce Young. They are more of the names you're going to find in the mid-round, second round. There were some first-round talent at the Senior Bowl this year, so we're going to get into it right now, starting with Florida offensive guard O'Cyrus Torrence. I love this kid. He is 6'5", 337 pounds, and is 23 years old coming out of Florida. So O'Cyrus Torrence is the best rated guard in this draft. I think guard is one of the biggest needs for the Giants this year by far. I want to get this offensive line solidified. I don't want to keep playing the jigsaw puzzle. O'Cyrus Torrence would fit that. He was amazing in the Senior Bowl. He was shut down. Every snap he made, it just made you want him more and more and more. So let's talk more about O'Cyrus Torrence. So he was a 3-star grade coming out of high school. He then went on to play 11 games his sophomore year in 701 snaps total. And he only allowed 2 QB hurries, no QB hits, and no sacks. O'Cyrus Torrence has let up very little sacks. I think it might be no sacks in his whole college career, which, of course, is a stat that jumps out to you. Let's get into his strengths. So O'Cyrus Torrence is a huge man. That is one of his strengths, his weight, his size. He's big, he's tall, and he's super strong. He has a lot of muscle. He's super strong, and he's also was a 4-year starter at Florida, which is another stat that jumps out to you. That is pretty amazing. He started his freshman, sophomore, and junior year. He dominates in the run game. That's his strength. That's a big strength of him. He dominates in the run game. He is chucking dudes. I mean, we saw this at the Senior Bowl. He was every snap, he was off the snap, and he was hands-on, fast hands on the defensive tackle, whoever he was going up against, and he was either down on the floor or he was going nowhere. O'Cyrus Torrence did perform very well in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. And he has good feet. He has lateral quickness, and he's not like sometimes you'll see linemen, they don't have that quickness or they don't have the hands. He has that. He's confident. Sometimes confidence is big. Ivan Neal, his rookie year, he didn't have a lot of confidence. Confidence will go up with time with Evan Neal, but just an example, confidence is a huge thing. He also has experience at both guard spots. He's flexible. He can go to right guard. He can go to left guard. So when the Giants draft him, they can kind of, if the Giants draft him, they can kind of pick where they want him to play, which side, which guard. Assuming he'd probably be left guard because Mark Galinsky, we signed last year on that big contract, is probably going to have to start again. He is very good at trap blocks. He's definitely the best run blocker in the whole class. Whole offensive line, best run blocker. And he works with teammates. He has good communication on the line. He has good communication with his tackle, good communication with his center. And that's important. When you're on the offensive line, you have to communicate a lot. And so that's an important key to an offensive line. Now, he does have some weaknesses. When pass rushers come at him, he does get a little confused sometimes. He does have good quickness off the snap, but sometimes he gets confused. He he sometimes gets too high on the pad level. You got to be right there on the pad level. Sometimes he puts his hands too high. He sometimes misses blocks in a scrum when there's like a lot of pressure. Sometimes he'll miss blocks. He'll kind of have a miscommunication or kind of something. And he sometimes gets overset and beat on the inside. So like in between the center and guard would be the inside. This would, so that's another thing to keep an eye on. But other than that, I mean, Osiris Torrance could completely be an option for the Giants in the first round, pick 25. I would not put it past the Giants to draft an offensive guard in the first round. We need to solidify that offensive line. As much as I would love to draft a wide receiver, I don't know if the wide receiver that we want is going to be there. And so Osiris Torrance would be another great option at pick 25. And I think Giants fans, I'm warning you now because I know some of you quick to judge a pick. And I'm telling you, Osiris Torrance, he is a lockdown offensive guard. So staying in the interior offensive line, we have John Michael Smith. He's a center out of Minnesota. He's 6'4", 306 pounds, and he was also an amazing offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl. We had amazing offensive line prospects at the Senior Bowl. I mean, I'm only naming a couple, but we had a lot of good offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl. So John Michael Schmidt, I mean, he was just impressive. He didn't lose one rep at the Senior Bowl, one-on-ones, the game, everything. He was just impressive all around, an impressive prospect, and definitely one of the best prospects that was even at the Senior Bowl. He ranks first in his prospect rank, and he's 23 years old. So he's a bit of a older prospect, but again, that's still young. You still can get a good 7 years out of him. So John Michael Schmitz, he was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. He then went to play action 5 games and 17 total snaps for Minnesota in his freshman year in 2018. And then he went on he started his senior year, played 13 games and played a total of 837 snaps. No QB hits, but he did have 5 QB hurries. So he was a 5th-year senior. That's why you see he's 23 years old. He was a 5th-year senior. So he did have 5 years of eligibility at Minnesota. He's outstanding on reach blocks. He has good arm length. He can reach block. He's very good at that. He destroys guys in the run game. I mean, that's a very big strength of John Michael Schmitz. He destroys players in the run game. I mean, he just runs over them. And you saw that in the Senior Bowl. I mean, every snap he was either putting a guy on his butt or he was maneuvering him out of the way so the running back could either run up the gut or so he wasn't touching the quarterback. He explodes off the line. I mean, he snaps that ball, explodes. Sometimes with centers, you see they don't explode. You see that maybe they don't explode off the line because they're worried about the snap. No, he explodes right off the line, right at the point of attack, and he's getting that defensive tackle. He has very strong leg drive. He's very good. Again, that comes with speed. He's very good at driving into players. I mean, he is not – you want to talk about a player that's not afraid. John Michael Schmitz is not afraid. As Bobby Johnson would call him, a dirtbag. I mean, he was shut down at the Senior Bowl. Definitely his prospect I'm going to look into more as the draft is coming upon us. But, I mean, he was just shut down. Again, he is a liability when it comes to pass rushes, kind of with Osiris Torrance, kind of similar problems. So if someone's like coming up if it's a pass rusher coming up the gut, I think Darius Smith did that to John Feliciano in either the playoff game or the first Minnesota game. Sometimes he doesn't trust his athleticism. He grabs and he kind of overreaches or stuff like that. He loves pancaking. Sometimes that can be a problem. If you're going for the pancake, then pancaking is when you're basically throwing a guy on his butt. So he does. Edge rushers are a problem, but again, he plays center, so he won't be seeing a lot of action from edge rushers. He has decent feet. But again, the speed, if he gets a defensive tackle who has speed on him, I mean, he can be a liability issue for sure. But overall, I mean, John Michael Schmitz was impressive at the Senior Bowl. He was extremely impressive. He knew he came in there and he stood out from everyone else at that Senior Bowl. He's debatably was the best prospect of the Senior Bowl this year. He's rising his draft stock possibly into the first round, early second round. He could be an option for the Giants at pick number 25. Again, offensive line guys, that interior O-line, we need to solidify that. Wide receivers is a big need, but again, I'm going to get into some wide receivers that maybe we don't have to address in the first round, but we can address in later rounds. So that's coming up. But we're going right to the wide receivers after this. But John Michael Schmitz, again, to just conclude, option at 25. If he falls in the second round, I would not put it past the Giants to trade up higher into the second round to draft him. I mean, there is going to be a lot of interest in John Michael Schmitz as he showed out at the Senior Bowl. But definitely someone to watch at the combine and through this pre-draft process. My bad. So now we are going into wide receivers, and we are starting with a prospect, Jaden Reed, out of Michigan State. So Jaden Reed this past season had 55 receptions, 636 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I know what you're thinking. You're like, what's so special about this guy? He only had 636 yards. Well, Jaden Reed has a lot of value on special teams. The Giants need that punt returner who can be reliable and that kick returner who can be reliable. Past seasons, I felt like we just kind of put people in there, and like Gary Brightwell, Richie James. This guy, younger, he has youthness, potential, someone you can develop. He's 5'11", 191 pounds, so he's smaller. He would definitely play the slot, but he has ability to move in and out. So kind of like a Sterling Shepard in a way. So he is 25th ranked wide receiver in the class. He's 22 years old. And he again, guys, he has a lot of potential. He's a big special team guy, but at the Senior Bowl, he showed out. He was making plays. He was shifting. He was jet sweeps. I mean, it was impressive. He was getting open. He definitely used the Senior Bowl to his advantage, and that's a guy you can find in the 5th round, and that's like a steal. I mean, that's a steal there. I mean, you got a player you can develop over time, and I feel like that's important. So yeah, I mean, he would be a steal in the 5th round. But again, this is one of those players who came in the Senior Bowl looking to rise his stock. I think he did. I mean, I think everyone kind of looked at him as a 6th round pick-ish. So I think he could actually be a 5th round pick now. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. He also stretches the field. So that's one of his strengths. He stretches the field a lot. He doesn't have exceptional speed, but he does have a little speed to him, and he's reliable. Once you throw him the ball, he usually catches it, unless it's not a great contested catcher, but if you give him a shot and he's open, he will catch the ball. He did score a touchdown in the Senior Bowl. He on deep routes, he'll get separation. He will burn that corner. He did that in the Senior Bowl. In the Senior Bowl at one point, he flipped a corner around, and next thing you know, he was scoring a touchdown. It was pretty impressive. Someone I saw during practice was impressive. He's probably the most consistent wide receiver at the Senior Bowl this year. So definitely someone to keep an eye on. Again, this is all prospects that I saw at the Senior Bowl that I like. So these aren't my final list of prospects that I like, but these are the prospects I saw at the Senior Bowl that I like. So he's decent on deep routes. He gets separation, speed down the field. He'll stretch the sideline, he'll use the sideline to his advantage. He is a non-boundary option. So if you're looking for he's not a good blocker in the run game at all. I mean, he's not someone you would put out there in your run blocking package. I mean, that's just not someone you put out there. His playing speed's not great. He doesn't have a lot of speed. In college he passed defenders, but I don't think, and other evaluators don't know if that will translate to the NFL. Again, something to watch as the pre-draft process continues, see at the combine kind of thing. He does have some problems with drops. To me, when I watched him at the Senior Bowl, it didn't look like the drops were a problem coming in. When he left, I didn't feel like that was a major issue I had with him. He can track the ball, but sometimes he catches it with his body, not his hands, which it's a fixable problem. But sometimes he'll use that as like his safety net kind of thing. So that's all I have for Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. Again, he's a 5'11", 191-pound senior coming out of Michigan State. And again, someone with a lot of potential. Maybe he didn't have the stats in college that wow you, but he has potential on special teams. He has the potential in the slot, and he's someone you can develop over time. I mean, he's not – I liked what I saw from him at the Senior Bowl. I mean, maybe I didn't like what I saw from him in college completely, but at the Senior Bowl, I mean, I saw a better Jaden Reed at the Senior Bowl than I did in the college film. And sometimes it's what you see. You see a better player in the pre-draft process than you thought you saw on tape. So we're going to go to probably the wide receiver who wowed the most people at the Senior Bowl this year. Again, a shorter guy, 5'10", 163 pounds out of Houston, Nathaniel Dell. He had 109 receptions for 1,398 yards and 17 touchdowns. So the stats are there. He had decent stats in his senior year. I think actually that's his whole college career. And, I mean, that's decent stats. I will take that. So, he performed pretty well at the Senior Bowl. The first 2 days he wowed them. I believe he sat out the third day because he did not want to risk injury. And then I don't believe he played the game. But again, he someone with a lot of potential. He looked really good at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he was making highlight catches right and left. I know I posted some of them on my story, but yeah, I mean, he was looking good. So he transferred a lot. He wasn't at Houston his whole career. He saw action in 2018 as a freshman and just one game for the Georgia Bulldogs as he made 6 receptions for 199 yards for an average of 33.2 yards per reception. And he was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school. And, so he showed a lot of potential. He's smaller school, University of Houston is. They don't play the greatest teams, but I witnessed him in person, and it was pretty incredible. I didn't think he was a bad player. So he led the nation over the past 2 years with 2,700 receiving yards and 29 touchdowns. His quickness, possesses excellent straight line speed. So that means like he gets down there and fast. He's point of attack, and he has pretty impressive speed, as I noted. He's good getting open. He's like a quarterback's best friend in a way. He was with his Houston, and we expect that kind of transfer over into the NFL. He looked great. And on the tape, he looks great. He's a natural playmaker to me, is what I see in him. Natural playmaker, someone you can get in the second or third round. Again, you don't always need that first-round wide receiver. This is a wide receiver that you could turn into that one option. Maybe it takes a couple years to turn into that, but he's a good runner too. He has good feet, good footwork. He keeps his eyes up to dodge traffic. He's a shifty wide receiver. A lot of the wide receivers we saw at the Senior Bowl were the slot shifty wide receivers. But there are some, of course, with every prospect, there are weaknesses for them. Main concern scouts will have with Dell is he's limited size. Again, something that really holds a lot of these players back is their size. He's only 163 pounds and 5'9". A little taller than Wandell. But again, you guys have to remember, just because we have Wandell does not solve our wide receiver room. It really doesn't. Or the slot position or wide receiver room. Because Wandell's not going to be ready till midseason. So who's going to take his place for the first half of the year? And in Buffalo, Joe Shane and Brian Dable, they never stopped drafting shorter wide receivers. They had Isaiah McKenzie and Cole Beasley, who are 2 short slot wide receivers there at the same time. So I'm not putting a limit on who I look at just because they play the same position as someone we have already. No. So playing against much bigger DBs in the NFL is a question mark with him. Of course, smaller guy going against a bigger DB, physical. It gets more physical in the NFL than it was in the college game. So he's also easily out-muscled strength-wise. He doesn't have the greatest strength. He has short arms. He doesn't have long arm span to help him. So his catch radius, like when he goes up to catch the ball, it's not very long. He ran a spread offense at Houston. That's something I saw on tape. He ran a spread offense at Houston, and not a lot of teams in the NFL do run that spread offense. And a spread offense also includes like a limited route tree. So something you want to probably work on with him, develop him, is his route tree. So he definitely is a wide receiver. You would probably he did play the outside at Houston, but in the NFL he probably moved to the slot just because of his size and the stronger DBs in the NFL. All right, so we're going to continue with our wide receivers. It's going to Andrew Lozivis. He's a 6'3", 212-pound wide receiver out of Princeton. Smaller school. Interesting prospect just because of the fact that, hey, he's coming out of Princeton, coming out of left field. No one really knows a lot about him. And his production wasn't bad this year. He had 66 receptions, 943 yards, 7 reception touchdowns. He's a track convert. So he played track originally and then he moved to football. He's a big guy, tall, physical outside receiver. So we have a wide receiver who showed out in the Senior Bowl, someone that could play the outside. The reason I scouted this man specifically is just because of the fact that I read a couple articles, and apparently Odell Beckham Jr.'s, I know this is a crazy story, but this is truly what happened. Odell Beckham Jr.'s agent, who was with the Giants when there was all that free agency visit or whatever, apparently churned on the tape of Andrea Lozivius and apparently wowed Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen was impressed. Joe Schoen he put him on his list. It kind of caught the eye of Joe Schoen. And Joe Schoen said at the Senior Bowl when he talked to the media, he said, like, we're looking at this kid. He told the story about this. So interesting prospect, someone who has a lot of speed. He showed day 2, I believe, was his best day at the Senior Bowl. If I remember correctly, he made some good contested catches, and so that's him. He's a pretty fast guy. He ranks 19 in position in the draft. So again, someone you can get in the later rounds that has a lot of potential. His block. He has good blocking too. So he does come from a scholar school though. So he's a good route runner. He's not a bad route runner. He runs his route tree pretty well. He has reliable hands. Yeah, like I said in the Senior Bowl, he showed that he had good contested catches. He has good when he runs with the ball pretty well. Makes defender misses in open field. Good speed, good footwork. So again, I mentioned he is a track star originally, and so that's kind of where he gets his speed from. He accelerates quickly off the line of scrimmage. So top end speed. He is probably some of the best speed in this whole draft class of wide receivers. And so also his frame, tall frame, big frame, someone with a lot of potential there. So he's not going to threaten the defense necessarily. Again, he's probably like more of a prospect you want to develop. He does not always use his hands to secure the deep throws. Again, we kind of talked, I believe, with our Jaden Reed, the Michigan State wide receiver, kind of talked about how he isn't he catches like to his body, not with his hands. Again, that's a fixable issue. He doesn't create a lot of separation, but you don't always need a wide receiver who creates a lot of separation. And that's Adrian Lovis for you. So Princeton wide receiver, someone to keep an eye out, and the Giants are looking at him pretty in depth. So someone to keep an eye out as we go through this pre-draft process. All right, we have one more wide receiver for you before we end this episode of the first episode of the Giants Chronicles podcast. All right. We have Tyreek Stevenson. He's a cornerback out of University of Miami. Something that intrigued me about him on the practices at the Senior Bowl is, first of all, he would fit, assuming Wink is back here next year. Wink's scheme is built for this man. A lot of the Senior Bowl, if you don't know, is like press man coverage, and a lot of what Wink runs is press man coverage. He was a shutdown in press man coverage. I mean, he was owning some of these wide receivers. Like these wide receivers shouldn't show their faces again. That's over exaggeration, but I mean, really, it was crazy. He only had 2 interceptions this year, but again, he's more of that press man corners. And when you see press man corners, sometimes they don't really have that. They don't really have that interception numbers. He has 25 tackles and 7 passes deflected. But yeah, he's someone to look at. He's definitely someone I'm going to keep an eye on going into this draft. Again, at the Senior Bowl, he looked pretty decent. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about his strengths real quick. He'll line up in press man, like I was just talking about. He's very good at press man coverage, and yeah, something to keep an eye on. He does have a tendency to get a little grabby. It happens a lot with cornerbacks in the collegiate level. So again, feet aren't ideal. His feet work can be sloppy at times. Tall frame, long arms, so that helps you. You know, he's physical at the line of scrimmage. He has a strong punch. He can reroute wide receivers. He did a lot of that at the Senior Bowl. So very intriguing prospect and someone to look at. Well, that concludes my Senior Bowl recap of prospects. So I just kind of want to do a little segment here real quick, just away from the Senior Bowl stuff. So Mike Kafka is going in for his second interview. Is considered one of 2 finalists for the Arizona Cardinals job. So Mike Kafka, only been with us for 1 year, has been a star in the head coaching searches. He's got interviews, I believe, everywhere. Yeah, he's got first interviews everywhere, and apparently the Cardinals are very interested in him. He's one of 2 finalists. I believe the other finalist is the Bengals defensive coordinator. So very scary. But I do want to remind you, Giants fans, is that we ran the Buffalo offense. It's not like Mike Kafka came in and installed his offense. Brian Dable came in, hired Kafka, showed Kafka his playbook, and then Kafka added some wrinkles to it. So I don't think it would be that hard of a thing to replace. I think you would promote your quarterback coach, who's Shea Tierney, who got an interview recently with the Buccaneers for their offensive coordinator position. So something to keep an eye on. And again, thank you guys for watching the podcast. We are continuing to grow. This is just episode 1 of many. So please tune in to the next episode. And with that, let's go Big Blue.